Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So, hot off the heels of the interview Todd Howard did the other day with IGN, he has jumped onto Reddit to mark the 10th anniversary of Skyrim and do an Ask Me Anything covering games past and present and future from Bethesda. So there's some interesting tidbits in here about games gone by, and there's a couple of interesting little bits about Starfield and upcoming games as well, and some sort of observations that flesh out some of the stuff from the interview that we covered yesterday. So grab yourself a cup of tea, put your feet up, and let's have a little wander through this, shall we? Okay then, so fortunately Reddit has now tidied this up a little bit, so it should be easier to go through. But yeah, there's some cool stuff in here. There's some interesting observations and a few little tidbits about upcoming games as well. So interesting to have a little look through this, so let's dive into it. So, here we go. Very unusual to see Todd Howard on any form of social media whatsoever, but cool nonetheless. So we've got the little introductory post there, and we'll jump into the questions. So the first question here. You repeatedly said tone is the first thing that BGS prioritizes in designing a game. How do you pick the tone to build an entire game around? Are there conversations or even debates about what the tone should be? Also, how do you preserve tone across so many different areas of development, especially the non-visual ones such as NPC dialogue that can't pull so directly from your studio's excellent concept art? So, very, very cool. Great question, one we debate here often. Tone equals world. Kind of vague, but just how long can he actually make these answers? What place would you want to explore? Why? Who would you be? What would you do? How does that pique your curiosity? How is that curiosity rewarded? Like mixing places with elements that you feel comfortable with or can relate to alongside the fantastical. So, in a sense, probably doesn't illuminate a whole lot other than sort of a general conversation about where the game is, what it's going to be, the mood, the atmosphere, and what sort of people are there, what sort of characters are there, and how they interact. So all of that together to create a tone, which is basically how tone looks, I suppose. So yeah, makes sense. Who is the mother of Jarl Balgruuf's children? This is a good point. We never actually see her or find out, but in a world with the technology level of Skyrim, for example, it makes sense that some people might be lost parents, children, unfortunately. So that's history for you. So the absence is not particularly surprising, but apparently Balgruuf's not talking, and I'm not going to click on this because God knows where it'll take me, but it's basically a picture of Jarl Balgruuf sitting on his throne, doing his thing and looking moody, so who knows? I wonder if there is an answer to that, but I'm guessing not. Interesting. Here's a cool one. Starfield. Will there be any robot companions in Starfield? Yes, kind of. So I've seen a few people latching onto this as to say this is companions in Starfield confirmed. I would like to see that. That would be very, very cool. But I don't know that that's necessarily true here. I'm guessing what he's actually referring to is, if you look at the trailer for Starfield, you can see there's a robot wandering around in that. He's on board your ship. You see him arrive and come back on the ship as you're taking off to leave in that trailer. So I'm guessing that particular individual, whose name escapes me now, but it is visible in the sort of writing on the mirror in the trailer. So there's a little bit of information there that is pretty cool. So I'm guessing that's what he's referring to, and he's not yet revealing anything beyond that little moment, so probably nothing new there, but so don't latch on to that as being set in stone, I think. Be interesting to see what they do there. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see companions in Starfield at some point, though, in some way, even if it's not a robot companion, other than this guy, of course. So, yet more Starfield stuff. I've read the goal of Starfield is that it will be more of a hardcore RPG, whatever that means. Can you verify this and flesh out in more detail? And there's the other half of that question. Does this mean the character creation will be more complicated like it was in Morrowind or Oblivion? So that's an amusing observation, given that he made reference to people's opinions of Morrowind and stuff in the interview the other day, and how some people felt that the character creation and stuff was dumbed down after it. I have not played Morrowind, so I can't comment one way or the other, but interesting nonetheless. So a fair question and funnily timed. Really excited about what the team has done with character creation here, including choosing a background, skills, etc. You can also pick your pronoun, he, she, they, and we've recorded all the relevant dialogue to support that choice, which is definitely a step in the right direction. It's good to see more and more inclusivity coming into games across the board, and it's definitely happening in a wider sense these days, and good to see Bethesda also doing the same thing. Very, very cool. Obviously, the last few years in particular have really thrown quite a big spotlight on that sort of thing, so good to see Bethesda embracing that and really going for it, because if there's sort of dialogue being recorded to accommodate that, then that's obviously a significant amount more work, time, and therefore money as well, because obviously you've got to pay voice actors. The more work they have to do, the more they cost. So it's a good to see them investing in that sort of thing, and it's really cool. There's a cut underwater vault in Fallout 4, Vault 120. What was going to take place there? Also, a whole lot of Fallout 4's map is underwater. True. Was there any content planned for that? Thanks. Unfortunately, cut content. It was going to be a Bioshock-style vault with a massive sentient octopus living outside it. I have no idea whether or not that sentient octopus line is serious or not. I'm going to go with probably not. It was probably something they talked about, but I doubt they actually intended to put a sentient octopus in. It seems a bit absurd. The wrong kind of absurd. There's plenty of absurd in Fallout in general, and that's fine, but I don't think that will quite fit. But yeah, cut content of an underwater, presumably flooded vault. That would have been interesting to explore and figure out how you're going to breathe down there and stuff like that, but yeah, I can imagine it got cut because that would be such a big undertaking just in and of itself to apply a whole new set of mechanics for that and stuff. I mean, yeah, there's Aquaboy and stuff like that, Aquagirl perks, but those only go so far, so interesting. I can't remember if Fallout 4 actually, whether or not Aquaboy and Aquagirl allowed you to breathe underwater or just extended the time you could breathe underwater and stuff. I don't think it let you breathe entirely, I don't think, but I can't remember. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments, but yeah, that would have been an interesting idea. Obviously, cut content is a thing that happens with almost all games, especially big games and open world ones, so a little sad. That could have been interesting, and obviously, yeah, there is a big chunk of the map that is underwater. It's basically the Atlantic Ocean, so there could have been a number of cool things out there. There were a number of cool things out there. The submarine springs to mind, amongst others, which I never actually got around to exploring. I probably should at some point. Many things to do one day. Even with nearly 3 years sunk into Fallout 4, there's still stuff I didn't see. So, I absolutely adored the Terminator games that Bethesda did back in the 90s. Still got the boxed copies. Oh, awesome. That's probably worth a few bob these days. The atmosphere of the future was so exceptionally realised when you consider the limitations of the time. My question is this: do you have any particular memory when it comes to development of those games that stand out? And if the opportunity arose, would you ever consider going back to Terminator for another game? Not necessarily an FPS, because I think those were fairly FPS based in the past. So, thanks for the note, really, Terminator. We loved working on it. The license was in limbo, presumably at the time. So we were able to do pretty much whatever we wanted. We alternated fantasy worlds and post-apocalyptic worlds with the Elder Scrolls and the Terminator series before we did it with Fallout. So, sort of a description of the experience, which is interesting. And I think we have to take from that he's probably got no intention or expectation whatsoever of going back to that IP. And that's not surprising. Terminator's in a different place now to it was back then, so obviously films are being made, stuff like that. Getting a license for it and stuff will be difficult. And as he'll touch on again, but did yesterday as well, a couple of days ago now, in that interview, the wait time between games in a given series, or between games in general at Bethesda, is fairly long, and certainly longer than most of us would like. These things are going to happen, obviously. There's an upper limit to how much work any given group of any given size can actually do, so ergo it takes time to make, etc, blah blah blah. Not very interesting, but it is what it is. So obviously injecting an extra franchise in there would just, well, I mean, obviously they're doing that with Starfield, but adding yet another one in just extends that time between games even further, and yeah, I suspect not particularly practical, but yeah, I would like to see that bit more about those games eventually. I think the Fallout 76 documentary that NoClip did had a few clips of it in it, but yeah, finding out a little bit more about that would be interesting sometime. So, hey Todd, what happens when it just doesn't work? What's the best worst bug you've encountered? A long time ago during Redguard? I can't remember which game that is. It rings a bell, but well, obviously, of course it rings a bell, but interesting, okay. The lead programmer made all the buildings hop up and down after you played for 10 minutes just to mess with him. I'm not sure that counts as a bug, really. That's more like a deliberate prank, but yeah, kind of amusing. I'm currently playing Oblivion. Any tips? Pick acrobatics and jump constantly. I assume that's a reference to a meme or a long-running joke that I don't get because I didn't play that much Oblivion and I wasn't that much into the larger Bethesda community at the time. So, yeah, hopefully that means something to other people. Will Skyrim Anniversary run at 60 FPS on PS5? Yes, and the same on the Xbox Series X and S, though there'll be different resolutions. I assume what this would mean is that the Series S, being the less powerful console, will run at 1080p rather than 4K, both at 60 frames, so that would make sense, discrepancies in hardware power and all that, so yeah, good little confirmation there, cool, and only requires a short answer. So, hi Todd, what sort of game would you make if you had an infinite budget and 10 years of development time? We're incredibly lucky to have the support, time and budget to make the games we want, so all of them? I think we can read that to say that nobody's putting pressure on Bethesda, at least not within the company anyway, to produce their games any faster than is practical for them to do. Obviously, there's outside pressure in the sense that the fan base obviously want to get the games in their hands quicker, and I'm sure the team and both the business side of it as well would like to see games going out faster. But I mean, as I was saying somebody earlier, obviously, Bethesda games, we know they have bugs. It's a thing. It's going to be the same with Starfield. It'll be the same with the future games going forward. The difference is whether or not you can live with those bugs until most of them get fixed, blah, 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 and the ones that don't get fixed, can you still live with them? Obviously, if they start rushing games out, that answer is going to swing much more towards the no than the yes. I mean, obviously, everybody's on a different spectrum there anyway, but yeah. If they push games out too quick, then the result's going to be pretty obvious there, I think, so... that's probably a good thing, but basically it means sooner or later they're going to get around to all the games they want to make. So basically the 3 IPs that they have at the moment in BGS, so Elder Scrolls, Fallout and now Starfield, they're all going to come in their own time. Hopefully that will get faster as the years go by, but we will see, because obviously Bethesda, as Todd Howard mentioned somewhere else in here, are actually hiring and continually increasing and expanding their team, so... But at the same time, I suppose it's worth mentioning that each new game gets bigger than the last one, so the bigger the game, the more work. The two kind of offset each other a little bit, I suppose, so it is what it is. So, hi Todd, even after 10 years I still consider Skyrim the gold standard of open world single player RPG experiences. I'm sure there's a lot of people would agree there, I suspect there's a few that disagree. But, to each their own. Does Starfield have any groundbreaking innovations that will set a high bar for the next generation of action RPGs, similar to what Skyrim has done in the last decade? Thank you for your amazing work. So, a little bit of a poke to try and get some more information out about Starfield there. So we've got something very cool in the answer though. We prefer to just sow it, which will be next summer. We're happy with the advancements that we've been able to make, some of which you can see in the trailer shot in game. So there's a little nod towards ladders there, and obviously the graphical jump is quite sizable that you can see in that trailer. And there's 2 key things here. Firstly, the aim is to show more of Starfield in the summer. That probably doesn't come as a massive surprise. We're obviously all hoping to see E3 return in the summer. So the presumable plan from this is to have a massive Starfield presentation at that E3, which we would expect anyway because the release date's November, and that's the way that Bethesda has been doing it for at least the last 6 years or so, since the run-up to Fallout 4. So I think we can assume something similar will be going on for Starfield as has in the previous years, so should be very, very cool and nice. The other thing, of course, here is actual confirmation that the trailer was shot in-game, which is all very, very cool, so we can probably infer that when Starfield launches, or we can hopefully infer from this, that it's going to look pretty comparable to that trailer. I mean, there are examples in the past of games where that sort of thing didn't pan out, but yeah, these days they don't tend to push it too far because people go, what? when they do, so that's not really surprising. We would expect it to look similar. I'm sure that for the trailer they ran it on the best machine they had available and cranked the settings up to 11 and made it look as good as they possibly could, because of course they did, it's marketing material. Who wouldn't? But at the same time, that really does make the look of Starfield very, very promising based on that trailer, but again, getting your hopes too high might be a little unwise. Obviously, some of it will depend on what you're running it on. You know, if you're running it on a 3090p powered PC versus a console, there probably will be differences. But yeah, it is what it is there. But nonetheless, it definitely implies good things about the look of the game, and very, very keen to get my hands on it, as you can probably tell. So, hey Todd, what type of mod support can we expect to see in Creation Kit 2, Creation Engine 2? And for Starfield, our plan is to have full mod support like our previous games. Our modding community has been with us for 20 years. We love what they do, and we hope to see more make a career out of it. So yeah, that's a little nod to the fact that numerous mod developers for Bethesda's previous games have ended up working Creation Club mods and then moving into Bethesda and actually working at Bethesda now. Several of their dev team came in that route, so very, very cool, and we plan to continue doing that. Obviously, it'd be crazy for Bethesda not to continue supporting modding because it keeps their games alive for years. That's why we're currently staring down the barrel of yet another Skyrim release. So, you know, it's by far and away Skyrim there being the biggest game that they've ever released, and it's still selling well, and etc, etc, etc. So mods are a lot to do with that, so not surprising to hear that they're intending to incorporate mods into Starfield. So begs the question what people might do with it once the game is out, and what mods we might see, and what the future of Starfield might be post-launch as well, which is going to be very, very exciting, and I suspect probably going to be the basis of a lot of videos going forward. At least I really hope so anyway, because definitely hyped for that. So here's an interesting question with an even more interesting answer. How has the release of Cyberpunk 2077 influenced your team's philosophy towards releasing games? Open-ended, but also direct. So, I can only speak to the issues we've had, such as Fallout 76. We let people down and we're able to learn and be better from it. We're fortunate 3 years later to have 76 be one of our most played games, and it's thanks to the 11 million players who have made an incredible community. It's made us much better developers in the end. So the hope there we can take from this is that they have learned from their mistakes. That would be the sensible approach for anybody under the circumstances, and obviously it's what we'd all hope to see. So fingers crossed that's going to pan out. The jump back to what Bethesda have done throughout their career anyway of big single-player games with Starfield is definitely consistent with that, and it's going to eliminate a number of the issues they had anyway because it's what they know and what they're experienced with, so that will help. I think it's good that he's not said too much about Cyberpunk here, because talking about the experiences of other companies, yes, I'm sure he's aware and he's seen it, but he won't have much more of an inside track than the rest of us do on that, so it probably is a wiser decision to focus on the experience that is in-house, i.e. 76, and learn from that directly. And the two experiences are somewhat comparable, so not surprising that they've got their own one to focus on, so yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, as I say, hopefully they have learned and it should be good moving forward. I'm sure they will want to not repeat that and avoid repeating that, so hopefully they'll be doing everything they can to make that a reality when Starfield launches, and obviously subsequent games as well. So here's a really cool one. The Amazon Fallout TV series. So, hi Todd, is the Amazon Fallout TV series still in the works? Is there any chance you can give us some details? I'll buy an extra copy of Skyrim. Got a cross out. So, it's moving ahead. Really exciting to be working with Jonah, Lisa and Amazon on it. So, not much of an answer there, other than confirmation that it is still going ahead and they are still working on it. When it comes to the development of things like this and TV shows, I've got no idea how long these things take. I assume it varies. I gather there's a period of years to make these things happen usually, but beyond that there's not much I can say, and it's way outside my field of knowledge. So, on the other hand, very, very cool to know that it is still moving along. It has been, 18 months since it was initially announced now, so who knows, maybe next summer we'll hear something about it, maybe a little later, I don't know. Obviously, Bethesda will be filling a kind of creative direction side of role there, rather than a actually making the thing role, because, you know, they're games developers, not TV producers, so... but good to know it's moving along. Since everyone's going to ask, any updates on TES 6? This is obviously where we reference the wait time. So we know it's been a long wait. We're with you. For Father's Day this year, my son gave me a card that said, "You're an amazing dad, but where's TES 6? Yeah. So he did reference in the interview that he gets asked at home about whether or not TES 6 is coming and when it's coming. There's a little bit more details on exactly how he gets asked. But yeah, we've covered this already, you know. It takes time. It's coming. It's, in all likelihood, probably 2025, 2026 before that one lands, based on 3 to 4 years as the average amount of time it takes them to put a game out. So that's the way it is, unfortunately. We don't want them to rush these things and ruin them. Okay, so technology question. Hello Todd, in the past year we've seen the rise of some impressive machine learning tools that synthesize human voice using assets from Skyrim and other Bethesda games to generate new realistic voice lines. What do you think about this technology in general? Do you have any hope to use it in some future game? And do you think it'll have a negative impact on the relationship between game studios and real voice actors? Reasonable question with reasonable concerns behind it. So, the answer being, we actually use such systems during development so we can play the game with voices, but there's no substitute for professional actors. They're a huge part of our development and amazing partners in bringing these worlds to life. Very, very true. The best you can expect machine learning a computer to do, certainly at the moment, is pull from bits of different performances and combine them to create something, but it's never going to be the same as an honest-to-God performance by a human being. It's not going to have that same life to it and that sort of thing. We know, in fact, Bethesda have said before that they use these things to kind of flesh out the game a bit while they're developing it so they can get a better feel for how things work prior to the voice lines being finished and put into the game, obviously. But, yeah, having the sort of dynamic nature of a live performance by a human actor is something that I don't think any machine is going to top, at the very least. They might do an impressive job of coming close on occasion, but also just how new can they go? Like, are they able to create a genuinely new performance? I mean, if we look at the recently released Deathloop, the performances of the actors behind Colt and Juliana, up for awards at the moment, very, very cool, very, very impressive performances. I don't think machine learning could have produced something like that. So, yeah, it has its place. It's useful as a stopgap, but good to see that the life and breath of real actors is part of it and always going to be from the list, which is cool. I definitely approve of that. So, hi Todd. Guy made a 50-page Google Doc about the Starfield E3 trailer here. I'm going to ask, has there ever been a point in Skyrim's development where you thought of adding climbable ladders to the game? Also, about that ladder in the Starfield trailer. Will it be an animation, like holding E to climb up, like in Mass Effect Andromeda? So, here we go. Despite the advent of supercomputers and next-gen hardware, ladders are our arch nemesis. Yeah, they've always had problems with that, and though the engine has been massively overhauled to accommodate numerous things, including ladders to a degree, it's, you know, the ground on which it's built is the same, even if it's been then rebuilt from the foundations upwards. So it's an animation and one we use sparingly. So there's not many ladders in Starfield, but there's a couple, and you'll basically be moving up to it, press and hold the button, and an animation will play to get you from one floor to the next. As, yeah, apparently they're a pain in the arse. And as an also a comment which I think came from another AMA that the dev team did in the past, I can't remember exactly where it was, but apparently even doors are really, really difficult. Actually, I think it might have had something to do with Skyrim, actually, because there's apparently a startlingly large number of if this then that and possibilities to just having a door in a game. I imagine ladders work much the same way, possibly not quite as complexly, but still. It has been a long-running joke, that one, and cool to see that they're at least getting some way past it, but not all the way past it. So, we got a whole list of questions here. If I recall around Oblivion, you made a comment that you don't code anymore. How's this changed your influence in directing games, and do you miss having a direct hand in development? What's your stance on retcons for lore, and would you ever release a lore Bible? Is the main quest in Skyrim more of a side quest to the Elder Scrolls, Civil War being the main? How do you handle being the face of Bethesda is the other question. So lots of questions, lots of interesting things. You'd be here all day if you answered them. So we've got a great list of questions, thanks for being here. And I've got a summary answer, which makes sense. I'm really lucky to have started so long ago that I'm able to get my hands in everything from code to sound. It's helped me see the big picture and work with so many parts of the amazing team at Bethesda. So obviously he's got an overseeing supervisory role these days, and having some experience in every department means he can actually, well, know what he's talking about better and have his hands in there and direct and encourage and lead people to working together as a team or working together as a group of separate teams with more facility, I think is what we can interpret from that. Help me see the big picture and work so many parts of the amazing team at Bethesda. It's odd often to see my face on things, and while I understand it to some, it's truly a massive team effort, and I get way too much of the credits. Nice, good response. And looks like we're getting to the bottom now. So what do you think of Fallout New Vegas? It's a great game, big fan of Obsidian, and we have many friends there. I would agree with all of that. Still think it's the least good Fallout game. Don't at me, I'm right. But yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I would agree with it. You likely touched in your interview yesterday that you realise the clear issue of gaps between your games and franchises and know it's a problem. What is your plan, if any, to reduce the massive gaps of time between games on your 3 franchises? Also, I keep one of the quotes on a sticky note with me wherever I need it. It's not how you launch, it's what it becomes. Interesting. It's a fairly cool quote. So, great question. We certainly understand that we do take a long time to get right. Ultimately, quality matters most to us, and we're careful with resources and priorities. Also, we're hiring, so so there we go. It takes time. They've got the resources they've got. They can only stretch them so far without things falling apart. They'd rather take the time to get the games right and be the best games they can. You know, we know there's bugs, yada yada yada, but it's the underlying everything else that is so important that also takes a great amount of time, which is why it takes the time it does. And also we're hiring, so who knows, maybe it'll get a little faster over time. But yeah, as I said before, the bigger these games get, and they're inevitably just going to keep getting bigger because that's kind of what we expect, and you know, that kind of topping the last thing mentality that movies, TV, video games, they all share, is always going to drive games to get bigger and bigger, which means they take longer to make. So there we go. Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Yes I do. And last but not least, good afternoon, Todd. How did you see the new Custom Worlds mode is much less popular than Nuclear Winter itself? That is probably true, but it also makes the takes the attitude that Nuclear Winter was popular. It wasn't. It was decidedly not popular, which is why it is gone. So, is Bethesda ready to bring Nuclear Winter back to the game? No. And its players, well, it's still possible. Not going to happen. So, we're pretty passionate about giving our players tools to mod the games, and thus shifted our priorities to custom game worlds. More to come. So, a weird answer there, but as speculated, it means that we have now confirmation that custom worlds are going to be the basis for modding once that comes into Fallout 76, and that will obviously give people the opportunity to create their own PvP type worlds if they want to. But yeah, in a nutshell, the reason Nuclear Winter went away was because it was only played by a fraction of the player base. They might be a vocal fraction, but they are still tiny numbers compared to the larger player base, so it is what it is. Unfortunately, a lot of people do seem to be somewhat in denial about that, but you know, if a lot of people were playing the game mode, they wouldn't have taken it away and they'd have put more resources to it. They're not going to put their limited resources, however, into something that is not getting much use. It's pointless. Might as well focus on the things that the majority of the player base are interested in, and that's where we are today. So, yeah, but very cool to have out-and-out confirmation of the speculation that was in place already, that the world setup is the initial foundation that will lead on to modding the game, which is, I think, not surprising, but yeah, great to have that confirmed. So, this has gone on a while. There's lots of cool stuff in there. I'll try and speed things along a little bit in the edit phase, but we'll see how that goes. I guess you guys know right now, and I don't. So, yeah, interesting. Lots of little tidbits, lots of cool things, some random observations that are less fascinating, but kind of fun nonetheless. Some anecdotes, stuff like that, which is cool. And yeah, interesting to get a few little snippets of information around Starfield and stuff like that, and some insight into games gone by. So yeah, I find this seems pretty cool. Unsurprisingly, not vast amounts of new stuff coming out about the upcoming games. They'll release information as and when they're ready to, is the nutshell. So pushing them for more information before they're ready was never really going to be that successful, and it's probably wise. So we already know what reaction people have to things changing. You know, they say something is going to be the way in the past, and then development being what it is, things change, and then when the game releases, something they said would be there isn't, or vice versa. People get upset about that, and so avoiding that is probably the way to go, which is why they don't share information until they're ready. So yeah, not too surprised by that, but yeah, looking forward to seeing what's happening. Very, very much excited to see more of Starfield this summer, and of course they'll be sharing bits of information between now and then as well, and I'll have to make a point of bringing that to you, because cannot wait to get my hands on that game. So, on that joyous note, hope you found this one interesting, informative, a little bit of entertaining, you know, all that stuff. If you did, please do consider dropping subs and likes. I do very, very much appreciate it. Down below the video, you can find channel memberships, social media links, and the merch store. If you're interested in supporting the channel in that way, I do very much appreciate that as well. It hugely helps out. Massive thank you to everybody who's done that already. And if you get a chance to join us for live streams as well, of course we are playing on Fallout 76 and jumping into The Witcher again this evening, which I'm very much looking forward to as well. Having a lot of fun with that, and much, much more to come. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.